Wisdom Seekers. I want to continue talking about some of the lessons that my mother, my inept mother, taught me that have really, I've unearthed them, so to speak, through the practice of writing wisdom. If you're interested in that practice, I'll leave a link below. And if you enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a thumbs up. I appreciate it. YouTube's a new platform for me, so I'm hoping to improve as I go. And feel free to subscribe if this content is interesting to you. And yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the lesson of belonging from my mother. You see, after my parents divorced and I was about 10, I was living with my father because my mother had not wanted to be a mother anymore and had left. And so I was living with my dad and helping to take care of my three sisters. And it didn't take too long before my dad had another woman in the picture, and she came to live with us. And well, let's just suffice it to say that she and I did not get along, and that created all kinds of havoc. And it didn't take long before my dad and I had an argument about her, and he basically said I couldn't stay there anymore. And I was given moments to throw my crap in a bag, and I was taken and dropped off at my mother's. My mother, by this point, was living with her new boyfriend, and they weren't even there at the time when I was dropped off. And so I found myself sitting on her front stoop for hours that night. And she was in a band by this time and playing in some club and wouldn't be home until the wee hours of the morning. And luckily I found her car unlocked that night. And I sat in it and waited in a cold night in Michigan, where I grew up, and waited and contemplated like what was going to happen to me, since I no longer had a house at my dad's, and I had known that my mother didn't want to be a mother anymore. So I waited until they got home that night, and then I sat in the living room of her apartment as I'm hearing her and her boyfriend basically talk about the fact that they didn't want me around either. Now, thankfully, I had grandparents who did. She called her father, my grandfather, and the very next day they came down and picked me up, and I went to live with my grandparents. And over the course of the next 6 months, so did my other three sisters. But for me, I never went and lived with my mother. I never lived with either of my parents ever again. I went from my grandparents to college and being on my own. But my grandparents showed up in that way. And I can remember sitting in the back of their car, driving 3 hours away from the life that I had known, the friends that I had, the boyfriend that I had at the time, that first love boyfriend when you're 10 or 11, whatever I was. And having to leave all of that and the life that I had known to go live with my grandparents, who I had only known through holidays and, all of those festival-like activities, birthdays, and fun events. and not really understanding what their day-to-day actually looked like. And um, and really feeling lost in that, feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. And I can remember sitting in the back of their car on that journey to their house, feeling like I didn't belong where my parents were. I didn't belong with them anymore. And I didn't really feel like I belonged with my grandparents either. The only place that I could find that I belonged was with me. And so I vowed to myself that day to always take care of myself, like to always be there for me and to create my own sense of belonging. And the minute that I could, get educated, support myself, that I really wanted to create my own family, my own place of belonging in the world, and not rely on that belonging from others. And I think that's been, while there are certainly painful aspects to that lesson, um, having my own sense of belonging has been a good compass along the way. And, um, you know, but sometimes you need to belong elsewhere as well. There are pluses and minuses to these lessons, I'm afraid. That anything taken to an extreme, perhaps, is out of balance. And my approach to belonging also became out of balance um, because I needed to allow others in as well. But I learned lessons of belonging that day, where I belonged, where I didn't, where I perceived that I might not have belonged, but ended up belonging in certain ways. My grandparents certainly welcomed their home, took care of us, and really gave up many years of their lives raising us. Um, and I'm forever grateful to them for giving me that roof over my head, a place to sleep, a place to eat, and allowing me those years to grow up, um, and not having to worry about where I was going to live to do that. Um, so I'm grateful to them for that, and for giving me that sense of belonging in their house, even if I always somewhat felt separate from that, like I didn't quite belong there either. But it did give me the space to belong to myself, which is important. That's today's lesson from an inept mother. And I hope you are enjoying this content. All of these lessons have unearthed themselves in my own inner knowing from my practice of writing wisdom. I'll leave the link below if you want to check that out. Subscribe to this channel if you're interested. And we will talk about all kinds of topics coming up, visioning your future, accountability and focus, all kinds of things. So I hope you'll consider joining us. Subscribe, thumbs up the video. I'll leave the link below to check out the classes. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.